Hi, I'm Tom Dickey, the editor of Hot Topics, and I'm joined here today by Dawn Hudson, CMO of NFL. So Dawn, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So first question, you're responsible for one of the biggest brands in the world. How do you think that differs from some of your past roles within consumer products?
So I've worked on small startups to big brands. I personally like the challenge of a bigger brand because I actually think it's harder in today's environment where everybody likes new things to create something that's new and different and make it topical. I know how to do that. To me, that's easier, to take a brand that's so well known by so many people and find a way to stay true to the core, the essence of what makes it a brand, and yet innovate it and keep it fresh so that it feels new to new people and it doesn't die like your father's Oldsmobile. That's why I actually took the job at the NFL, because I thought that having a brand that big and trying to keep it fresh and surprising was a real challenge.
So how are you doing that? How are you keeping the NFL fresh?
Well, one would say maybe I'm not doing it well enough, but I'm certainly trying. I think it's about, we really tried to focus on generations. You know, people kind of connect with sports in different ways at different times of their life. You know, when you're young and single or young and just married, it's going to be your entertainment. You're going to go out, you're going to go to a bar and watch a game. And you start having kids and it sort of changes, and then it becomes a Sunday family experience with kids. And then you get a little bit older and you're at work and you use Monday Night Football as a way to sort of have a personal timeout, take a big deep breath before the rest of the week. And so really looking at different segments and how to get the right content and the right kind of experience to the right segment. And in our case, spending a lot of time looking at young people, because sports continues to be the #1 source of entertainment for people under the age of 18 and even people in their 20s. But it's being challenged by all that plethora of entertainment you can get. And it's interesting because the live football game used to be, you know, one of the last things you'd watch live television for, and you had to have seen the game on Sunday night so that you could have the water cooler conversation the next morning. Well, now you have to have seen Game of Thrones. You know, if House of Cards came out, you have to have done that. So by really focusing on making sure that we're keeping football current and part of current popular culture and discussion so that it stays relevant to the next generation. And I think that's probably the focus I've brought to the NFL differently than what it was doing before.
And so how are you leveraging tech platforms to do that, to break through the noise and the competition?
Well, what's really, to me, was a hidden asset that I didn't realize when I took the job, is that because we've centralized our database, and you think of all the team tickets that they sell and how they collect names, and then you think of our partnerships with DirecTV and other cable providers, and, well, or cable providers, and we get their names, and then we transact and sell them a shirt, and we get their names. So we have a database of 83 million people that's growing, and a good portion of it is international too as well. So we know a lot about people, and we are using that data. Honestly, my focus is on that people, is not just treating them as data and not just treating them as I can slice and dice and put you in different buckets, but in treating you as a fan. If you're in my database, you're at least a casual fan, and a large part of you are avid fans. So I've got to create a community where you feel special being part of the community and feel like we give you access to things you can't get other places. We give you information first. So that's not technology, that's using technology as a way to reach fans.
Yeah.
Now that we also reach out to youth largely on social platforms, obviously the great thing about our database is we can profile different behaviors and types of fans and know exactly who we can then go out and programmatic target and reach in the digital world. So it's technology, but I would say technology only works if you have some sort of emotional connection that you can make with a fan on their terms, understanding what makes them connect to football.
And so, 83 million strong database, that's a lot of people and a lot of data. How do you prioritize that data to make sure you're using it to inform and make the correct
So
decision?
I think what's interesting about sports to me versus coming up in consumer products world is the degree to which marketing is sort of a glue that connects a lot of people. So in the case of the database, it's also a transactional database for our group that's developing consumer products and selling them. For for our group that's working with clubs on ticket sales, for when we sell Pro Bowl sales, for people that are using it to send out press announcements and what's going on at the NFL. So what's important is to use it and target the right people for each of those and make sure that based upon who we're targeting that we have the right way to connect with them, so that even if we're sending them something as silly as, you know, you can buy Pro Bowl tickets ahead of everybody else, it's done with an eye toward what can I tell you about the Pro Bowl that you might not pick up elsewhere? What can I do to make you feel a part of the inside group for the NFL in talking about something that's relevant to you? And that to me is the difference between making a transactional database, which it's been, where every department in the NFL and every club uses the database, to making sure that we're not oversaturating the wrong people with the wrong message, and in fact creating a connection through simple, basic communication and offers.
And how are you gauging the success of that strategy, or the
well,
customer
of course,
experience?
we look at that in terms of, you know, it starts with your basic open rates. Then we look at, from that, do we get you to go to another link and explore, and how much time do you spend, and do you go on from there? And so we have a whole tracking mechanism, and based upon how long you engage with us, in general, you're a more avid fan. So, and it's really powerful for us to then look at how someone who's a real avid fan connects with us, and we have a new person who are just trying to get involved with us. How do they, and you can see over months and year period of time how the connections grow and how they move and they spend more time in content, if we do our jobs right and put the right content to the right audience.
I know you've spoken a lot about using or working with the athletes themselves as part of your marketing. Can you talk a bit about how you've done
So
that?
football to me is really interesting if you think about it versus other sports, because one, it's the most team-oriented sport. I mean, it is. I once met a owner of an NBA team, great guy, and he said he was at a football game. I thought, well, why are you here? And he said, you know, it's interesting. He said, love basketball, obviously, but I feel like if I put two stars on a court and I give them the ball 60% of the time, I can more predict what the outcome of that game is going to be. Because in football, two stars in a team are not going to make it or break it unless the people are blocking appropriately and the play works and there's the opening and the receiver can catch it. And so that unpredictability and the fact that it's, you know, every play is like 6 seconds long really engages him. And that's what's great about football. It is really a team sport. But as a result, the athlete hasn't developed their own unique personas as much. And they wear helmets. So you see them grow their hair longer or color their hair to try to stand out. But for the most part, versus other sports, they're covered and they're part of a team. So they're kind of emerging. And if you look at the social following of a football player versus almost any other sport, the other sports are ahead. But the football world is catching up quickly because I think players are realizing that whatever their time is in with the NFL, and they hope it's 15 years, but if it's in only 3, that's the opportunity for them to create their own brand and to have voice. One of our most successful programs we did last year came from talking to the athletes, engaging with them in something they wanted to do, finding a way to help them do that, and our fans connected like crazy because these are all their heroes they're following on the field, and they wanted an opportunity to hear what they were thinking about and doing.
Interesting. Oh. You mentioned that the international, I guess, growth has been strong. Mm-hmm. How have you done that, or how have you? I mean, the UK is one region which I know you've been particularly prominent over the last few years. How has that been for the NFL?
So first of all, you know, from a fan standpoint, we've got about 185 million fans in the United States, and we've got a growing group internationally. It's about 140 million, but they're not as avid as the ones in the United States because they've just grown up with the game for a shorter period of time. And I think soon the international fan base will overtake the domestic fan base. But it's different because it happens by you offer it on media, stream media, televised media, and people sort of start to understand what the game is. And then I think what's happened in the UK is having live games has caused people to physically be able to see it. And I think in our case, now that there's 4 games a year and a real international series, over a course of a couple of years, you're going to see all of our teams. So that kind of engages you in knowing the different personalities and the different strengths and weaknesses of the team. So that's where we see the kind of interest in something that's just different. It's an alternative to the other sports in a world where people are seeking different things that they can share, that can set them apart and know something somebody else doesn't know. Internationally, football is this sort of crazy thing that people are intrigued with.
Yeah.
But it's a hard sport to get to know, and it's complicated. So then as you come up the learning curve, you start to become pretty avid. And so what I've learned about our UK fans is they're largely under the age of 30. But it would be a real mistake to think that they don't know the game every bit as well as a domestic fan, because they have to almost in some ways work harder at it, to see all the games, to get the content, and they do, and they really know what they're talking about. That's what I'd say maybe is half in a growing part of the fan base. Then there's this other half that wants to find out what those people know, right? And so, like, there's some phenomenon going on. So whenever I go to, Wembley or Twickenham last year, I always stop and ask fans, why you're here, is there a team you root for? And a couple things come to mind for me. One, what I love about the UK fan base is they show up wearing a jersey. Doesn't matter what team it's for, doesn't matter how old it is. It's just pride that they're associated with the NFL. So NFL versus a team brand, we love seeing that sort of passion for all 32 teams. But the second thing is I'll meet a bunch of people that just have heard about it as a spectacle, and they just want to see what it's about. And what's interesting and somewhat challenging for the marketing organization is we've got to find a way to make sure that we are not talking in any way down, if you will, to the avid fan. But we still have enough to do to engage somebody who may not even know what a first down is and what's going on. So we have pamphlets and other things that try to, and obviously an app and a digital assets to try to give information to the people who need it, but not talk down to the avid fan.
So you're finding a balance between being patronizing and informative, I guess.
Exactly.
Has that had any impact on your domestic fan base? Has there been any cynicism about the?
It's just interesting you raise that. One of the things we were experimenting as a team with is, it's been interesting to me over the years that I've worked on things where hair care products made in France, or food from France, and it's mixed opinion in the U.S. to say, oh, eat this, buy this, try this, wear this, because it's French. You have to kind of be a little subtle about that, or the Americans say, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But in the case of Americans, I think there's a pride in knowing that the sport is kind of catching on internationally. So I think, one, of being able to share with the U.S. fan, one, they're following the games now. They can watch the games, although sometimes they're at odd times. We give priority to the UK fan and put the game on at 2 in the afternoon so that they can get home to their families at night. Well, that means that people in LA may have to get up at 6 in the morning to watch the football game. So they definitely get that it's international at that point. But I think there's a pride that their sport is catching on, in the same way that there's a pride in what we call soccer, you call football, coming to the United States, and people are discovering it. Yeah. So anyway, long-winded answer to a short question.
I mean, given all the changes that data and tech have brought into marketing, what are the skill sets you think are required to be a successful CMO today?
I definitely think it's been a changing landscape. First, I'll start with what I hope never changes, which I think successful marketing officers, people in marketing of any level, understand that a brand is more than a set of attributes. A brand is an emotional connection and how it fits in with someone's life. So no matter what the targeting and the tools that are far more technical today, and the analytics you can do to see if you're having success and if you are being as efficient as you can be and getting the best return on that investment, in the end, it all works better if you've got a message that relates to the target you're talking about. So I think definitely today's CMO is much more tech savvy, is much more analytical, is nimble to do many things at many times. But I think ultimately their success or not fails in whether they can orchestrate all of that to still serve a brand with an overarching message. And sometimes I worry that when I grew up in the business, I was taught that piece of the business, and then I've learned the technical data part as it's come to fruition. Yeah. But how do you take people that grow up in the data part of the business and still make them understand that that data and the success behind the data is more successful if you get the messaging and the connection and the brand messaging correct.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me here.
No worries. Thank you.